Hi everyone, my name is Carla and my semester project is on decolonizing therapy. So, for part one of my semester project, an area of interest in social work that I wanted to research was the sexual and domestic violence among Native American women. And the first article I researched was titled Barriers Faced by American Indian Women in Urban Wisconsin in Seeking Help Following an Experience of Intimate Partner Violence. This article discusses the obstacles that Native American women face when attempting to leave an abusive relationship. So, one obstacle is financial and housing insecurity. They rely a lot on abusive partners for financial support because they fear of being homeless. They do not leave these relationships. They avoid medical care due to lack of insurance. One woman the author spoke to described how an EMT forced her to take an ambulance, and then later she was billed $15,000 and she just can't pay that. Another obstacle is the community and cultural challenges they face. There's a fear of gossip and public shame in small Native communities. There's also a distrust of police due to racism and sexism from law enforcement. Native American women are often perceived as deserving of harm and can be wrongfully arrested based on their clothing or assumed involvement in sex work, even when there are clear signs of abuse. And this obviously leads to the distrust of police. And the last obstacle mentioned in the article was that they have limited access to support resources. So shelters often turn away women or fail to provide vital information, such as cross-county shelters that can take them in, or even just any other shelter that they can go to. No phone numbers, no emails, nothing. And there's also a big discomfort with non-native social workers due to a lack of cultural understanding that they may have. And that when they spoke to non-native social workers, they felt a lot of shame and judgment. This article is a really good article to get information from because it interviewed a group of women who were survivors of violence. So you're really able to hear their stories and not make any assumptions. And the second article for part one of my semester project was titled Man Camps and Bad Men Litigating Violence Against American Indian Women. And this article examines the connection between sexual violence and oil pipeline projects on the reservation, and also specific clauses that could help improve the lives of Native American women who are victims of sexual abuse. So, man camps, what are they? They are temporary housing for pipeline workers, so oil pipeline workers, which include a lot of men with criminal records. And this is because of the high demand for workers, so employers become way, way less discriminating in their hiring process. These camps are big hotspots for rape, domestic violence, and sex trafficking. And these men knowingly target Indigenous women because they know they can get away with it and that the crime will not be seriously looked into. And bad men clauses. What are the bad men clauses? They were introduced in 1867 because of the horrific mistreatment and violence Native Americans endured at the hands of white settlers. These clauses could protect Native American women who are survivors of sexual crimes, but of course this comes with its own limitations, and those being that the victim must live on the reservation and that there needs to be very, very clear, concrete evidence that a sexual crime was even committed. This article was really good to read because it explains the connection between sexual violence and oil pipeline construction on reservations, which I never really thought about. So it also sheds light on important clauses that could potentially change the lives of Indigenous women who are survivors of sexual and domestic violence. And this article also pointed out that Native American women are more likely to be victimized by individuals of other races, which again emphasizes the greater need and attention and discussion of these topics. So, interviewee details. This is Michelle Sanchez. She is who I interviewed for this project. She is an Indigenous queer woman. She's been a mental health therapist since 2018. She currently owns her own private practice as a therapist. And these are just some other questions that I asked her in regards to her social work career. So her starting salary after graduation was roughly $45,000. And before her own private practice, she was working at another private practice, and she was getting $42 an hour and working about 20 hours a week. And then once she made her own private practice, she started earning $100 an hour, but right now she's currently working part-time. And she's currently on this inclusive therapist website, which I thought was really cool, and that was where I found her. And a little quote at the bottom, she says, "I strive to make therapy accessible and inclusive, removing barriers for overlooked communities through an indigenized approach to healing," which I thought was really beautiful. Okay, so about Michelle's private practice. It was established in 2022. She started really small, and she also mentioned that it wasn't difficult to start. She roughly needed about $500 to start, and now she has several inclusive therapists who work alongside her. She takes 5 different insurances and has self-pay. She also has a sliding scale, which is based on family size and income of the client in efforts to eliminate any financial barriers. And as you can see on the right, the green bottle chart, this is what she bases her sliding scale off of. So the fully green bottle is that you don't stress about any financial barriers or anything like that. The middle, sometimes you do stress about those things. And the very last one, you constantly stress about those things. You don't have a car, you can't pay for gas, etc. And her demographic is communities of color, marginalized people, and 2S LGBTQ plus people. And the 2S in LGBTQ plus is for Two-Spirit. For anyone that hasn't heard of the term Two-Spirit, using this term is the Indigenous way of rejecting colonial labels when talking about our Native American queer community. And the mission of her business is to focus on the Indigenous lens of our communities, and she integrates decolonization in all of her sessions. So, Michelle's ethical behaviors. The first question I asked Michelle in relation to her ethical behaviors was, how do you maintain client privacy and professional boundaries when clients may know each other? So, when a client comes to her and discusses this issue, she will neither confirm or deny their claims, but she will support their concerns. At events, she will say hello if the client initiates it. And also, she has to work around cultural norms and ethics as well. So an example that she gave was that if a client were to come up to her and put their hand out for a handshake, it would be really disrespectful in our culture to say no or to ignore them. And this is just one of the examples that she provided me with. The second question is, how do you ensure that clients who are minorities feel safe speaking to you without judgment or shame? So she will first share her pronouns and identity, like that she is Native and queer or anything else that seems important to share. She'll also warn the client about mandated reporting. She'll let the client know that they are getting close to crossing a certain line, and that if they continue speaking about a certain issue, whatever it may be, she will have to legally report them. And the reason she does this is because she knows how this system can impact families and how it can fail them as well. And she takes accountability to learn about different cultures in her free time. She tells the client that it is not their job in this session to tell them everything about their culture. Of course, she tells them that if they feel like it is necessary, then that's totally fine, but she takes it upon herself to do that research about their culture in her own free time. She also provides physical comfort. She's got tea, coffee, blankets, pillows, outdoor therapy options, and she also respects neurodivergent clients. So have, if they don't want anything in the room to smell, she'll make the room sprays optional, the smudging optional, and she also respects trauma rooted in traditional practices such as smudging. In simple terms, smudging is just a traditional ceremony that includes the burning of sacred herbs such as sage or sweetgrass, and this is done to cleanse the room and energy and yourself. This is a very sacred ritual. And also, please, if you're gonna burn sage, make sure that it is ethically sourced from a Native American based company or person. So, the last question I asked her was, how do you create boundaries with clients and in yourself for your own mental health? So, she will provide the option for clients to email her about ongoing issues, but she does make it clear that she will not reply until their next appointment. So that just creates a boundary, which is good. And something that I brought up during our conversation was that I'm really worried about potentially taking on my clients' emotions and trauma as my own and carrying that with me. So I asked her how she handles that, and in response, she said that she feels really grateful for the client sharing their stories and trusting her. But at the end of the day, it's not fair to the client if she carries those stories and trauma as her own, and that they came into this space to grow and to feel better, and it's not fair for them if you continue holding their story. And I thought that was really important. And she said, like, make sure you hand that back to them, metaphorically, of course. And I really loved the way she put that. It was kind of groundbreaking for me, since that was like one of the first things that I worried about when thinking about my social work career. And the last point is that smudging keeps her grounded when she feels confused or lost. So these questions are in relation to my part 1 of my semester project, where I researched the 2 articles that I talked about in the beginning. And of course, the topic of domestic and sexual abuse or violence doesn't only include women, but also includes our Two-Spirit community as well, since these groups are more at risk for violence. So the first question I asked Michelle was, where do you think the gaps are in domestic and sexual violence area of social work, and how can we overcome these issues? She said that Native American representation is where the gaps are, and we can work on this by attending specific conferences that are Indigenous-led. And she also said that there are more opportunities for culturally specific help, and then there needs to be more conversations about domestic and sexual violence and Native Americans and how it is a systemic issue. And the next question I asked was, what do you do to educate yourself on issues Native American women face when it comes to domestic and sexual violence? And she said that she goes to a lot of Indigenous-led trainings and conferences. She recently went to a victim of crime conference, and she said that it felt like home. They had a lot of workshops and taught how to heal victims with our own traditional medicine. And throughout this conversation, she stressed a lot that that these conferences and trainings need to be in Native American or Indigenous-led for her to go. And the next question I asked was, what are your thoughts on a domestic violence team responding to scenes as opposed to the police? And she said that it's a great idea because there is an unhealthy power dynamic that can paint Native Americans as criminals even when they are the ones experiencing violence. And she said that police can re-traumatize victims, so it would be great having a team that can plan for safety and resources, like on-site victim advocates. And she just said that there's definitely an opportunity for change in this specific area of support. And the next question I had was, what do you believe is not discussed enough when addressing sexual and domestic violence? She said that it's important to talk about the history and colonialism and generational trauma of Native American and indigenous people, and that if we aren't talking about that, we cannot get to the root of the problem. And in addition to all of that, she said our Two-Spirit community is also not talked about enough. And these are just 2 additional questions I asked. The first being, how do you talk about generational trauma? So she started all of this off by saying that she brings her whole self to each therapy session with clients. And at the beginning, she tells the clients that decolonial work will be integrated into therapy. She makes it really clear that she is Native American in order to discover if her and the client share an experience or traditions, or if they feel impacted by colonialism. She has her clients recognize their own privilege and or impact on colonialism as well, and colonization if needed. All of this is very important to talk about if we want to decolonize therapy and shift the lens from Western to Indigenous. And the last question I asked was, how and where do you actively share resources for people to access? She said that she will always ask the person if they need resources, because outwardly just giving someone those resources can be offensive. She'll navigate resource giving on an individual level and give the person her email, so there's a sense of confidentiality. She has a website for scholarships, Instagram to share news, a Google Doc for resources, and that when she goes to any type of conference or training, she will ask a lot of questions and listen so that she can be a better advocate for her clients and community. She has also learned a lot of what she knows from these conferences and from her own community and their experiences as well. So the next slide I have listed the positives and challenges in social work for Native Americans and myself. Starting with the positives, I have an opportunity to give back to my own community, which is something that I've always wanted to do. And social work will provide me with more knowledge about all marginalized people and will provide my own Indigenous people with a feeling of safety and peace, which is something we've never fully had before. And the challenges being basically on the front lines and the voice for all Indigenous people. That is a pretty big job. Challenging colonialism and learning more about the history, because it is very violent and horrific. And also just having to deal with the possible racism and oppression and marginalization in this field, having to urge others to expand their knowledge on Native American colonialism, and also challenging their own stereotypical thoughts, and possibly not getting a equal opportunity as my white peers. I know it'll be difficult, but unfortunately it's nothing new to my community. And the next slide is about Michelle's own concluding thoughts. So she really loves her job. It gives her a purpose in life. She also explained to me that school will give us Native Americans a degree, but our own people and traditions will give us the knowledge to help them. She also rejected a lot of Western teachings taught to her in school. She told me a short story about how she took a geriatrics class and disagreed with a lot of information that was shared as an Indigenous woman who understands her own community. And the last point, which is something I think we can all relate to, she said that in her experience, schooling for therapy can teach students that they are not people, when in reality we all have emotions because we're all human, and to never let go of that. And the last slide is about my own concluding thoughts and what I learned from this whole interview. So she told me that I will always be the expert on my Native and Indigenous community, and this is something I truly didn't realize before this interview, but now it has become very obvious to me. She helped me visualize and taught me that it's important not to hold on to clients' trauma and emotions, because it's not fair to them if you do that. And she taught me a lot about how to create my own business, my own private practice, and how to provide services with those with less income or privilege, which is important when addressing marginalized people as a whole, and also therapy because it can be extremely expensive, which eliminates a lot of people who do need those services and support. I also learned that no class will teach me how to be a Native American therapist, and that going to Native-led conferences and trainings will definitely help me. And this whole interview overall just taught me how to decolonize therapy and what that looks like and how that will impact my own community. And as I end this video, I just want to urge my white peers to really address your privilege and what you want to do with that and how you will make the world a better place with it. Especially in social work, I think it's important to also ask, what will you do to make sure Native Americans, Indigenous people, and all marginalized people feel seen and heard and cared for? How will you use your degree and career to fight colonialism? But also, at the same time, not giving into the white savior process, the thought process, because there is a very distinct line between helping those who have less privilege than you and truly seeing what's in front of you versus helping those people because you feel superior, because you feel as though you need to save them in order to gain power, compliments, Instagram likes, a raise, or even just something to put on your resume, whatever it may be. White saviorism only perpetuates white supremacy, and the whole point of my PowerPoint and research is to break that thought cycle. So, thank you all for listening to me, and I hope everyone learned something. If anyone ever has any questions, feel free to contact me.